Hey everybody, quick disclaimer. I don't usually do stuff like this for my videos. I maybe put like a little warning at the start if a game is more graphic than usual, but this video deserves a sort of like viewer discretion moment. Silent Hill 2 is a game that encompasses a lot of deep and dark themes and things that get very, very heavy, such as suicide, mental illness, the list goes on and on, abuse, any possible thing you could think of this game covers as a topic. So if those sort of things upset you or make you uncomfortable, this is probably not the video for you, nor is this the game for you. But other than that, I hope you guys really enjoyed this video because I've got a lot to say about Silent Hill 2, and I really enjoyed my time with it, despite it being such a heavy game.
Leave her alone. Leave us both the hell alone.
Honey, did something happen to you?
In the video game sphere, Silent Hill 2 lives in this sort of pantheon of classics, almost to be spoken of like Citizen Kane is in a way that people look at films. It's legendary, basically, and I had never played it. It's sort of impossible to play legitimately these days until this remake came out. And so when it came out, I was obviously excited, but, you know, Bloober Team didn't always have the best history working on games. So when I started to see the reviews were great, I must admit I wasn't expecting that. And I decided maybe this is my time to check out Silent Hill. I'm aware that as a franchise, Silent Hill is very different than the second entry in the series, that the other games aren't exactly the same. But I don't really care. I was interested in playing 2 for its legendary status, and this was a great opportunity for me to check it out. And I must say that I am absolutely blown away by it, and it absolutely deserves all of its flowers, even if those flowers are rotten, withering, and dying. Silent Hill 2 is, at its core, a game about trauma and about moving on, or rather the lack thereof, I guess you could say, at points. It's a game about dealing with your mental health, about how other people deal with their mental health, and about how trauma can manifest in the world around us. It's basically an analogy for like Sisyphus pushing the rock up the hill to an extent. How much of Silent Hill is legitimate? How much of what James is experiencing as he looks for his wife Mary is real? You don't really know. And the game doesn't want you to know. A lot of what makes this game so good is that it doesn't tell you an answer. It leaves it up to your interpretation and how you view the characters. I think the way I look at James is probably different than the way other people would look at James. And I kind of like that the game doesn't give you an answer. It just tells you some facts, gives you some information, lets you experience this world, and then asks you to decide what you think happens. And the way you play the game, the way you view the characters, the way you interact with the world around you, decides the ending that you'll get. This game has 8 endings, which is crazy. That's a lot for a game that's this long. But I also think that's what makes it interesting and fun. The game is, in and of itself, a personal experience. How you view the characters, how you view your interactions with Silent Hill itself shapes you and the story you're experiencing. I personally knew a lot of what was going to happen in this game. As I said, it's kind of legendary, and so I knew a lot of the plot beats, but even knowing that, it still hits so different. And there were certain little things that I didn't know going into it, or scenes I hadn't seen before, that I found really impactful and shaped and changed my opinions than just having peripherally known information. It was interesting to experience a story that way, especially one that's so beloved by people. Now, I do want to talk spoilers about Silent Hill because I feel like a lot of what's great about the story is the way you experience it, but I also don't want to spoil that for anybody, so I'm going to kind of talk about the game in a general sense, as I've given my general opinions on the game just then. I'll talk about the technical side of it, how I feel it feels to play the game, actually physically, and then get into the aesthetics, the art style, the enemy design, things like that. And then finally at the end, I'll talk story. So yeah, I actually love the combat in this game. I find it like really, really fun. It's got this footsies-esque fighting game style to it that's nice. You can dodge back and forth, you can combo your melee into shooting and things like that, which is very different than the original Silent Hill, but it also still feels clunky enough that it fits that survival horror energy that you'd want. Like, James isn't a military man, so I wouldn't expect him to hold a gun and, have all of this experience. And so I find myself enjoying that aspect of it, the way that you feel human, you feel like a normal guy when you're playing as James. But the game still understands that doing that too much can be limiting and can make it not fun. So it chooses fun over limitation, but still holds you back just enough that it feels like a survival horror game. Nice little touches like James's voice cracking when he's beating enemies to death with a pipe, or his hands shaking when he's trying to shoot the gun. Little stuff like that really immerses you, and as much as it can be annoying when you find yourself missing a shot because James is shaking, you just don't mind it because you know it's part of the immersion. It's every little thing this game does to suck you in. And that's really, I think, the best flowers I can give this game, and especially the remake compared to the original, is using modern day graphics, sound design, especially sound design, and lots of different things to sort of immerse the player in this creepy, disturbing world, is where Silent Hill 2 Remake stands so strongly. I found myself genuinely shook and disturbed at points in this game, to the point where I've played lots of horror games, Dead Space, Resident Evil, Alien, all those sorts of things, Alan Wake 2, and I found them creepy and unnerving, as all horror stuff is supposed to be. But Silent Hill 2 had me genuinely just sitting there silently, just staring at the screen like, what is happening? Where am I? It feels so ambient, it feels so psychotic at times, but it's not trying to go for cheap jump scares. It's not like super gory even. There's not a lot of blood and gore. There's just strange things that you wouldn't expect. Walls that move, rooms that change as you walk in and out of them. This overall dreary feeling with this strange soundtrack. It feels like a fever dream. It feels like, as a Twitter comment I saw, you took 20 Benadryl and you're going insane. That's how this game feels. There's moments of just this weird aesthetic and ambiance that I've never experienced in anything else ever. It feels so distinctly unique, and knowing that it's such a classic, I can see all of the things that came after it that it inspired. It's kind of like how Dune recently has shown a lot of people that a lot of modern sci-fi took from it. I can see a lot of modern horror that took from Silent Hill 2, whether it's games or movies or any sort of horror medium.
I guess not.
I don't think she's here anymore, James.
I particularly love the foggy sequences in the town. The physics of the fog and the visuals of it is really impressive. The way the game sort of uses it as a rendering trick to make everything look very realistic, it's super impressive, honestly. As you walk through the fog to have realistic distance rendering, it's super impressive, and Bloober Team did a great job, and I really love that. But I also need to give them credit for the creepier nightmare sequences when James kind of falls into, quote, the other world and finds himself running from Pyramid Head, who is a good transition to talk about enemy design and characters. Even if you don't know anything about Silent Hill 2 or like horror movies at all, if I held up a picture of Pyramid Head, you would probably go, oh, I think I've seen that before somewhere, whether it was just online or in a movie or something like that. It's a pretty famous design, and a lot of other horror designs and movies have taken from Pyramid Head and used that design to inspire other things that they've done. So actually getting to experience that character, his sort of like Punisher-esque vibe that he gives off, Executioner even, experiencing that the way it was originally done was awesome. I was actually really impressed. I don't know what I expected Pyramid Head to be, but it certainly wasn't this character. I think I expected a more Mr. X from Resident Evil 2, just kind of chasing you around constantly, being scary. Not this sort of metaphorical, even mythological character that is sort of you're destined to run into because of who you are as a person, that sort of thing, right? This sort of otherworldly Punisher who's coming after you. It's very different than I expected, but I can see why that makes it so legendary. And that's sort of the thing I love about this whole game, is that this idea of dealing with your trauma, moving through it, or rather how people can't move through it. is super interesting to me, and the way that the game uses these otherworldly horror aesthetics to commentate on that sort of subject. But that's also why this game can be so heavy at times. I'm kind of stunned that it's got this classical representation. As a piece of art, it's very moving at times, even in a like, holy, I can't believe this kind of way. But at the same time, I'm stunned so many people like it. I definitely could see this just being something that's a turnoff for so many people and sort of live on as a cult classic. But it really isn't that. It's widely beloved in the gaming sphere. And I think it's really because of its cast. The cast of characters and the writing is what really pushes Silent Hill 2 forward. Characters like James looking for Mary, trying to move through his trauma, not understanding even how he ended up in Silent Hill or why he's here, or if anything he's experiencing is even real. And we have Angela, who's looking for her family and seems sort of paranoid all the time, or Eddie, who seems kind of sweet and genuine but harmed and bullied, and you slowly start to learn that he's, well, maybe more than it meets the eye. And then little Laura running around, this sweet innocent girl who could seem to care less about all the horrors around her. What does all of this mean? Where am I? And then, of course, the mysterious Maria, slowly sort of giving you this otherworldly vibe. And is she taunting you? Is she luring you in? Or are you just standoffish because of your own troubles? It's also interesting to see how this cast of characters comes together and how they're all sort of, well, chained, you could say, by this weird, creepy, otherworldly Punisher, the Pyramid Head. Silent Hill the Town is really the standout character, and the fact that it draws all of these different casts of really colorful characters together to make this story, to make you experience this idea of how do people change because of the actions they make, how do people deal with grief, how will people act like they haven't done anything wrong, how will people pretend that life is better than it is, and how will people come to terms with the things that they've done, whether they be good or bad. It's interesting, and I also find it interesting that from the outset, you can look at characters and go, I feel this way about them, and then feel so drastically different by the end of the game. And I think that's super cool. It's all about how the player experiences this game. Now, I'm sure I'm going to make people mad because I'm going to move into the story section of this game and see how I interpret it. Because a lot of what I think makes this game so beautiful and amazing, despite its heavy topics, is how much of it is a personal experience, how you interact with what it's presenting, and how it genuinely changes so much based upon user interpretation of everything it's telling you. It doesn't even have to change certain story beats, but you can view it differently based on how you see the characters and what they've done. So yeah, I'm sure I'm going to make people mad or interpret something differently than the years, literally 20 plus years of discourse that this game has had online, but I don't care. But yeah, spoiler warning, here we go. We're going to dive into all of the dark little twists and turns that this game has, and yeah, spoiler warning, dark, heavy topics and story moments ahead, so stay tuned for that if you're interested. If not, go play Silent Hill 2, it's amazing. So, it's worth noting that I knew James killed Mary going into this. I knew about the fact that he suffocated her, and I knew that a lot of the game's interpretation or how the player plays it and views James can go off of, what ending you get, the way you interact with the character, the way you play the game as James, the actions and choices you make as him can shape the kind of person he is. It not only changes the ending of the story, but it changes James as a character. If you view him as a broken man who made a bad decision and basically mercy killed his wife, you'll probably walk closer towards the Leave ending, by interacting with different things and getting points towards Mary. If you view him as a cheating scumbag who wanted nothing more than pleasure and lust and killed his wife to get her out of the way, you'll get the In Water ending, where he kills himself and can't deal with the grief. Or if you view him as a really, really piece of garbage and you look at him as a murdering psychopath, then you get the Maria ending, where he sort of perpetuates this vicious cycle of murder and lust. It's a very dark ending, and even though I knew it was going to be dark going in because of the topics about it, I wasn't expecting it to be this heavy. I mean, it is way worse than I thought. It is this dark, brutal, grimy experience as you slowly realize that this character you've been playing as is not the man you probably think he is. In the offset, you find him sort of, almost in a way, heroic. The game kind of presents him that way. He seems confident in front of Angela. He's searching for his wife, even though he believes she died 3 years ago. Only for you to realize that he's more of a coward. He's scared, he's broken, he's complex. And, well, he's got his dead wife in the trunk. It's kind of insane. And despite that, I find myself, oddly enough, sympathizing for him at times. I'm not really sure. The portrait of such a broken, torn apart man is so heartbreaking in a way. I find myself looking at James as the leave ending version of the character. I didn't get that ending when I played the game at first. I got the in water ending. But something about the leave ending resonates with me, where it's James did a terrible thing, and he is not a good person, but he's human. He made a terrible mistake. He was broken by his wife's grief and suffering, by the abuse he received from her, and by his own selfish desires. And the culmination of all of that made him crack, and he killed Mary. And he needs to move on. He has to. Even if it's not because he deserves to move on, but it's because he can maybe take care of Laura. You see him leaving with Laura, and I interpret that as moving on, even though you don't think you deserve it, because someone else might need you. And, you know, sort of like a parent, even when they make mistakes, still trying to make their kid better than them because they don't want them to fall into the same thing. It was sort of Mary's last wish in that way, that James leave with Laura. But it's still so dark and depressing. Will he just make mistakes again? Will he harm Laura? I don't know. It's so up in the air. But I feel like that fits the most with the way the remake has portrayed the game. I've been told the in water ending is more appropriate for the original. I haven't played the original, but I did go back and watch some footage of it, and I would tend to agree that it seems to fall more in place with that. But for the remake, they definitely want the in-water ending to be the true ending. I think one of the excellent parts of this game is how it uses the other characters to interpret what you've done, to interpret how you view James. Eddie and Angela especially. I look at Eddie and Angela as the two sides of a coin of how you could view James as a character. If you view him more like Angela, who was traumatized, abused, raped, sexually assaulted by her father in a terrible relationship, and she kills him, breaks, goes crazy, psychotic, and hurts him, but breaks free in a sense as well. Or at least I interpret Angela walking up those stairs as her trying to move on, even if she can't, because she's trapped in this sort of trauma of it all. Do you view James that way? Do you view him as someone who was abused by his wife and just eventually cracked and did a bad thing? Or do you view him more like Eddie, who was bullied and traumatized and decided that no one would ever talk down to him, so he became a murderer and killed the dog and owner and basically went crazy and then eventually tries to kill James? Eddie does say, James, you and I are not so different. And I find that to be one of the cool parts of the game. And then that's only emphasized by Pyramid Head, who is this literal, almost, quote, angel of death, punisher who is here to punish James for his sins. And he can only move on and truly face Mary at the end of the game, or really Maria in a sense, after he realizes that he deserves that. He's done bad things. He's made mistakes. He's hurt people. Once he realizes that he deserves that punishment, he can finally escape Pyramid Head. And that's such a cool moment in the game when he realizes that this trauma is all his own doing, and the only way to move forward is to accept what comes from that, to accept the consequences of his actions, the consequences of having to deal with killing his wife. However, there is no true ending to Silent Hill 2. It's what you take from it. You could get the bliss ending. You could get the comedy endings where a dog controls everything from a robotic contraption behind the scenes. It's kind of a crazy game. A lot of people don't know about the comedy endings, or at least I didn't before going into this. Or I'd heard of the dog ending, but knowing that the dog ending is so goofy and crazy, on top of what this game is and how dark and serious it is insane. And I find it cool that the game gives you that much freedom. It's super interesting. And I think that that's the fun part about it, is that when you replay the game, if you don't want to go through that dark experience of going through that part of the ending again, you can just go for the comedy ending, and you don't have to experience some of those goofy, crazy, dark moments. You can interpret it however you'd like. You can enjoy it in any way you want to. All in all, despite all of these dark, dim, gruesome, powerful moments this game puts forward, I think the best testament I can give to why I think it's worth playing is that despite everything, I still had a great time. And I want to go back and play the game again. I want to get the other endings. I want to get the achievements and trophies that the game has. I want to experience the parts of it I missed. I think that's the best praise I can give a game that's so dark and heavy, is that despite its heavy topics, my desire to experience it again is great. Silent Hill 2 is a masterpiece. If you're looking for horror, there is literally nothing better in the gaming sphere, and it's definitely one of the best horror games I've ever played, if not the best. It stands up there with Resident Evil 4 for me as iconic, even though those games are very different. And just with Dead Space as well. I mean, growing up loving Dead Space, seeing how much of Dead Space was kind of inspired by Silent Hill 2 is crazy, and I think I even prefer Silent Hill 2 now as well. But yeah, what do you guys think of Silent Hill 2? Have you played any of the Silent Hill games? Let me know in the comments below. Tell me if I should check out any of the other ones, or what other horror franchises you'd like me to check out. Thank you all so much for your patience on this review. I wanted it to be a special one and make sure I really talked about it in a good light and showed you guys how much I loved about the game. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for subscribing, commenting, sharing. All of you have been super supportive, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace and love, everybody, and remember, keep moving forward. Wow, bye-bye, yeah.